For those of you who are following me because of my paranormal content, I unfortunately have an update for you. Hi, my name is Samantha. I live in a haunted house in New England. We didn't know it was haunted when we bought it. We thought that after spending like $1,000 on mediums and holy water and ministers and crystals and sage and everything else, we thought that we were rid of our problem, and allegedly we are not. So about a month ago, I was passing out. It was like 11:30 at night, passing the out, and I heard somebody whisper my name. Sam. Now, what I didn't like about this was that it sounded like my husband. So I don't go, and it's not him. I'm like, okay, I'm tired. I want to go to bed. Please leave me alone. And I heard it again. Sam, leave me out of this. All right, I don't know. So, wake up the next morning, told my husband what happened, and he's like, are you sure it wasn't me talking in my sleep? I'm like, yes, you're not a ventriloquist, like it wasn't you. So we're like, okay, great, here we go again. But honestly, at this point, we are just so tired. We've been in this house for almost 10 years now. Like, we've done so much, but here's the problem. We've also done a lot of gardening this year, so anytime you're churning up the earth or doing anything like that, you're going to kick up spiritual activity. You would think that the ghosts would be happy about the fact that we are planting native flowers and we are taking care of things and we are getting rid of invasive species and all these different things, especially given the fact that I had that Native American ghost who was so mad at me. And I'm like, what? Are you the one that sold the land originally to the farmers? He goes, no. I'm like, okay, and I'm not the original buyer, so like, what are we fighting about, So first I thought it was him, because we did get him, the medium got him out of the house, and he's been sitting on a rock staring at me. Fine, whatever. Anyways, so you would think that they'd be very happy about all the gardening. Well, they're not. So 3 nights ago, not nights, 3 days ago, 6 a.m., I'm just waking up. And I felt, swear, hand to God, I felt a little child grab my hand. I had my hand sort of like, I was laying on my back, so I was kind of relaxed like this. And I felt it grab my hand like this and sort of pull it up a little bit, like they were trying to hold my hand or something. Now I've got a few of those running around here at this house, and sometimes they like to do a little, how kids come up and they act, you feel like you're being watched, so you wake up and they're just, and your child is your sleep paralysis demon, so sometimes we get a little bit of that going on, and sometimes a little bit of mama, hee, and then they like hide somewhere, and then I wake up and they go peekaboo, and I go huh, yay. But it wasn't that. It was not that. So I go downstairs, James down here having coffee, and I told him, and he's like, here we go again. I mean, here we go again indeed. This has just been going on, and it's like nothing that we do, nothing that we have done, nothing that we bring in, take out, like whatever, it just doesn't seem to make a difference. Well, last night, something else happened. Now, usually the paranormal activity happens to me, because both of us work from home, but oh, wow. That was a huge blue jay. Wow. Did you know that blue jays can live for like 7 to 10 years? I think that's what I read. Isn't that cool? A long time. Any hoodles. So, but I'm the one that's kind of, moving around, and I have a lot more like flexibility than he does, because he has a very serious job. And I'm like, so usually I'm the one that's experiencing the bulk majority of whatever paranormal shit is happening, just because I'm all over the towns and everything, and I'm all over the place. But last night, something happened to him. Now, the last time something happened to James, the first time was when he was actually standing right here in his dream, and he had a dream. Remember the spinning keys? And as the keys spun faster, it was like his knees were broken, his hips were broken, his arms were broken, and it was a whole thing. The second thing that happened to James was when Jacob finally made himself known and was fussing around with the nightlight, and James was trying to talk to him. Well, last night, James went out to play tennis and came home, And unfortunately, we did get this on the security camera, but the sound is muted. I didn't mute it. He didn't mute it. But pulls in the driveway. He's getting all of his stuff out of the car. And he heard someone, clear as day, go, "James, is that you?" He said it was my voice. So he's like, "I didn't know if you were outside in the garden, or if you were like watering, or if you were talking to me through the camera, but it sounded like your voice somewhere, like, I don't know if you were like in the hedges." I'm like, when have I ever said I'm gonna go into the bushes, please? But, he's like, "I don't know, it was you, and you were right there." So, he calls back to it, which, rule numero uno, don't fucking talk to it, don't engage with it. But he heard this thing, and he goes, "Yeah, honey, I'm home." Announce it to the world, why don't you? So I had just gotten everyone to bed. This man comes clomping up the stairs, "Baby!" And I'm like, shut up. I just got everyone to sleep, And he comes to the top of the stairs. I'm standing there in like one slipper in this nightgown I got at the Walmart. And I'm trying to make tea and fold laundry. And I'm like, "Why are we yelling?" And he's like, "Did you call me outside?" I said, "No. I got 2 tea bags and a pair of mismatched socks in my hand. I didn't call to you anywhere. I'm busy." So that's a mimic. So, I guess I need to go to the woo-woo store and get some more quartz and hematite and sage and maybe a stellanite wand, something, because here we go again.
My babysitter asked why I came home early, but I had been at work the entire night. This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about what my daughter said that the other version of me told her. The first weird thing was how my babysitter looked at me when I walked in. It was a little after 11 at night, and I had just finished a closing shift, and I was tired and annoyed and already thinking about going straight to bed. My babysitter, Maddie, was sitting on the couch with the TV on low, and when I came through the front door, she looked confused. It wasn't scared, but just confused. She said, "You're back again?" And I thought she was joking. I said, "What do you mean again?" She stared at me for a second and then said, "You came home earlier." I laughed because I genuinely thought she was messing with me, but she wasn't smiling. And I asked what time, and she said around 9:30. I told her that was impossible because I had been at work the whole night. And she said, "No, you came in, you unlocked the door, went upstairs, and then you checked on your daughter and left." I just stood there. My daughter was 3 at the time, and she had been asleep when I left for work. Maddie said she had put her down around 8, and then around 9:30, she heard my key in the door. She said I walked in wearing my gray hoodie and black leggings, and that bothered me immediately because that is exactly what I usually changed into after work. But I had left for my shift in jeans and my work shirt. I asked if the person said anything, and Maddie just shook her head. She said that I barely looked at her. I walked past the living room, I went upstairs, and I stayed in my daughter's room for maybe 2 minutes. And then I came back down and left through the front door. Maddie said she assumed I forgot something or wanted to check on my daughter between errands. I told her again that I had not left for work. She started getting irritated because she thought I was accusing her of lying. So I pulled up my work group chat, and at 9:30, I had been sending messages about inventory. And then I pulled up the location history on my phone. It showed me there at work the entire time. Maddie went pale and she said, "Then who came in your house?" I checked the front door. There was no damage or a broken lock or any signs that anyone forced their way in. Whoever came inside used a key. I went upstairs so fast I almost tripped, and my daughter was asleep in bed. Nothing in her room looked disturbed. Her blanket was still tucked around her, and her stuffed animals were lined up beside her pillow, and she looked completely normal. I checked the closet and under the bed, the bathroom, every room upstairs, but there was no one there. I came back down and asked Maddie to describe what she saw one more time. She kept saying it was me. I had the same hair and height and the same voice when I came through the door. I asked her what the voice said, and she looked uncomfortable. And then she said, "You said, it's just me." That made my stomach drop because that is exactly what I always say when I come home late. I say it so Maddie doesn't get startled. I checked the hallway camera we had near the stairs, and it wasn't a security system or anything fancy. It was just an old baby monitor camera I kept pointed towards the hallway so I could see if my daughter left her room at night. The camera didn't record constantly, it took only short motion clips, and there was one clip from 9:34. In it, someone walked up the stairs. The angle only showed the back of her body, and it was a gray hoodie and black leggings, the same messy bun I wear almost every day. And she walked directly to my daughter's room and opened the door, and the clip stopped there. The next clip showed her coming down the stairs, and her head was turned away from the camera the entire time. I sent the clip to myself and called my manager. I asked if he could check the cameras at work, and he did. He found me on camera at 9:34, and I was not home. Maddie had started crying. I paid her and had my brother come over because neither of us wanted to stay in the house alone. The next morning, my daughter woke up acting normal. I tried not to scare her, so I casually asked if she remembered me coming into her room the night before, and she nodded. I asked what I said, and she told me I sat on the edge of her bed and touched her hair. And then she said, "You told me not to tell the other mommy." I asked what she meant by the other mommy, and she looked confused, like I should already know. And then she said, "The one downstairs." I didn't sleep in that house again for a week. My brother changed the locks that day, even though we still don't know how anyone got in. Maddie refused to babysit for me again, and I honestly don't blame her. People tell me it had to have been someone who looked like me, or that Maddie got confused, or that the camera angle made it seem more similar than it was. But my daughter heard my voice, Maddie heard my voice, and at 9:34 that night, something that looked enough like me to fool both of them walked into my house with a key. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
Stories like this genuinely terrify me because they can happen to any one of us at any moment, and honestly, the thought of it terrifies me. It's about people experiencing life or alternate lives while in a coma. The story I've got is pretty wild. There's a man called Keenan, and he owned his own gym, and he was at peak health. And one day while he was taking part in some sort of fitness competition or challenge, he collapsed and had to be taken to the hospital. Now, Keenan doesn't remember really that day at all. The last thing he remembers is going to the toilet. He doesn't really remember taking part in the challenge. When he was rushed to the hospital, they asked his then fiancée to leave the room, and while she left the room, they had to medically induce him into a coma to save his life. Keenan was then in a coma for nearly a month, and during that time, he said he experienced another life. In his real life, he was due to get married the following year. He had 2 boys, exciting life, owning his own gym. He was very happy. So in this other life that he was living, he'd recovered from his coma. He'd continued being successful because he said that while in his coma, he lived in a glass house surrounded by a big body of water. He got married to his then fiancée, becoming his wife, and they had 2 more babies. They had twins. Keenan said there was no indication that he was ever in a coma. He thought he was living his life. However, one day he was woken up in real life from his coma, but then had to go back into a coma because he started suffering from a cardiac arrest. So they had to medically induce a coma again to save his life. Keenan wasn't aware of this happening. It all kind of blurred into one. He didn't realise that he'd woke up, gone back into a coma and all that stuff. He just says that this was just continuous. But he says he remembers in his life being in a tent and being forced to exercise continuously. He believed that he had to exercise to get more time on his life. He said that he had a branded watch. I think he said it was a Gurpin or a Gurnin watch. I can't remember. And it said 8 days on it. And the more he exercised, the more hours and the more days would be added to the watch. But it kept on going down. And he said that he was going to die when those 8 days were over. Now, eventually, Keenan in the real world woke up. A nurse woke him up, or medical staff woke him up, and she asked him questions like, do you know who you are? Do you know what year it is? All this stuff. He could answer everything. She said, do you know what time of year it is? And he says, we're going into November. And she went, no, you're going into December. I'm really sorry, but you've lost a month. And he then realised, oh God, what's happened? And he looked at his wife and said, where's the babies? And so she responds, we don't have any babies. We have our 2 boys, but we don't have any babies. And he's really confused. And he says over the next few weeks, he's learning that this life that he thought he was living wasn't true. He was surprised to learn that him and his wife didn't get married. And also, one of the bizarre things that happened was when he was speaking to his friend about the watch that he was wearing that had the 8-day countdown, his friend said, your second coma was 8 days long. Now, I find it really weird that he thought he was going to die when that 8 days were over. And he kept on trying to exercise longer to get more time in this artificial parallel life. It's weird. Anyway, thankfully, Keenan started to recover really well. He was definitely a fighter and he continued to exercise to get better. Him and his wife got married the following August, the following year, and soon she became pregnant. And she was pregnant with twins. And Keenan believes that the life that he saw was the future because he had his twins and he's hoping that he's going to be successful and live in the glass house by the lake. Now, Keenan's story's kind of wild, and I guess it's quite a nice story. You know, he recovered, he got the twin babies, but it makes you think, like, what are people experiencing? There's loads of stories, and if you have any stories, please comment them because I'd love to read them. But I've seen various stories online about people hearing the world around them, people experiencing darkness. And what do you think we're experiencing? Do you think it's just our brain keeping busy and active while our body is asleep? Or do you think we really go somewhere else? Is it a parallel life? Is it, I don't know, a different dimension? Who knows? Wild, bizarre, and, in my opinion, terrifying.
I tried to film this 2 times and TikTok deleted it both times. I don't know what it is that they don't want me to talk about, but it's apparently something serious. I was trying to make a video talking about what lies in the Himalayan mountains, right? And every time I try to post it, I save it to my drafts and then I come back to it and it's only at 17 seconds of recorded video. So let's try this for a 3rd time. So we talk a lot about Appalachia and the Ozark Mountains, right? So today, like I said, I want to talk about the Himalayan mountains and what lies beyond the trees there. There's a lot of Sherpa and Tibetan folklore about what we know as the abominable snowman, right? They call the Yeti. The Yeti is so ingrained in Himalayan folklore that monasteries actually had relics of this. They had a Yeti scalp and a Yeti hand on display at a monastery. It was in Nepal, but under like super murky and weird odd circumstances, all of these relics just completely disappeared. Of course, right? Buddhist legends claim that the Yetis were like guardians. There's one story of a Yeti that he helped this monk named Sengwa Dorje, and he like brought him food and water in his time of need. So when this Yeti ended up passing away, this monk gave him like a ceremony for his passing and kept his scalp in hand as like some kind of holy relic or whatever, and also proof that these creatures existed. But there's one account that was written by researchers that was told by a Sherpa about his father who went on like he was going up this hill to go cut some grass for somebody. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just started to smell this wretched, disgusting, horrible smell that he's never smelled before in his life. So that was already pretty off-putting. But then up ahead of him, he saw this like hairy, smallish sized creature just hunched over on a rock. And that's the thing about like the Sherpa folklore of this, is that it's not always huge and scary and like a big snowman like we think it is, you know, this huge big creature. Like this one was the size of a proper 7-year-old. But that does not make it any weaker than it is, okay? Like these things are very strong, and this man knew that, and he dropped all of his tools, his whole basket, and got the hell out of there. Because their local legend is that if you look at this thing first, you might have a chance of escaping, but if it sees you first, you're paralyzed and stuck in one place to where it can just go over and drag you into the woods and eat you, and you can't do anything because your body is fully paralyzed. Now, if you ask me, that's a horrible, horrifying scenario. So of course he drops his shit and he runs away. And the guy's son, the one who told the story and like how we know this story, he said that if his dad hesitated for maybe even 1 second, this story could have ended completely differently. Aside from like all the local lore, there's actually Western explorers and expeditioners who have encounters too. So in 1921, this British exploration or expedition group were doing like an Everest expedition, right? And they claimed to see ginormous footprints at such a high altitude that it just didn't make any sense. Plus, it wouldn't have made any sense anyway because of how big they were. I believe there's a picture somewhere, just like before. If I remember, I'll put it here. If not, look it up because it's real. The Sherpa guides that were with them confirmed like right then and there that those were Yeti tracks, 100%. So there actually is photographic evidence of a different Yeti footprint. I believe this one took place in 1951. This one is referred to as the Shipton footprint, which kind of just fueled the fire of this creature even more. Nepal's government was so intrigued by this that it actually put like laws and rules and regulations on people against Yeti hunting. Like, I can't even believe that was a thing in the 1950s. Regulations on Yeti hunting. But even to this day, some people who hike that mountain do claim to see giant footprints at such high altitudes that it literally, like I said, doesn't make any sense. That is freaky to me. I don't know, that freaks me out.
Let's do a quick story time, shall we? Let's go, my boom boom. It's story time. Boom boom. Paranormal Chicago activity with Cat G. That's me. And all y'all better not push my buttons today, you little heathen. Yeah, you heard me. You dirty minded heathens. Don't push my button. I'm talking about Washington Park again today. I'm not making another diagram. Y'all just gonna have to take it. This is the Washington Park area that I'm talking about. You shut up. I bet not hit no it's a peen on the screen. Shut up! Because it stretches so far across the city, oh dear God, I am not going to make it through this video with a straight face. I can't stand you dirty-minded heathens. Now I can't see nothing but a peen on the screen. I'm not doing it again. Because Washington Park stretched so far across the city, it's kind of broken up into a couple of different areas. You see this green little space right here? That's the Washington Park area. And then the long, oh Lord, I was finna say shaft. Jesus, fix it. This stretch of land out here is the Washington Park Palisade. Oh my sweet Lord. This is Sherman Park. Sherman Park is right off of the Garfield Palisade. That's what this little strip is down here. Listen, I had a friend who used to live over here on 54th. She had a badass son, okay? I'm talking about bad as hell. It wasn't no daycare centers who would take her son. And because I worked at night on the weekends, I was like, well, I'll take him during the weekday because TT Cat don't play that shit. I wish you would cut up on me, little boy. So we started going to the playground, right? It's this one slide, one that he refused to get off of. If he wasn't going down the slide, he was under the slide or on the landing right before you get onto the slide. You know what? This little motherfucker was bad. I don't give a damn. All you people, kids are not bad. Kiss my ass. He was bad. Boy, when I tell you, my nerves, child. Ooh. I didn't give a damn because he was bad as hell. You want to sit around on the damn slide the whole time. You don't want to pay attention to nothing else as long as you are not dying or hurting another child, baby. Stay your ass up there. While your TT Cat is sitting down here looking absolutely fabulous on this motherfucking bench. Trying to catch this man eye because I know he's a firefighter and a single daddy. Hey! We done been to this park like 4-5 times, okay? And he got a whole routine when he gets to the park. He literally runs around the whole little play area like 2 or 3 times. And then he go up the stairs, he come down a little firefighter pole. He do that like 2 or 3 times. And then it's the slide for the rest of the time that we are. Again, I don't care because ain't nobody dying. Ain't nobody getting hurt. He is quiet. I am happy. My nerves are happy. But then I start noticing he talking to himself. At first, I was like, ain't nothing too wrong with that because that's what kids do sometimes. When they playing by themselves, they'll start talking to themselves. They create imaginary friends and everything. I would know because I was the only child for 13 years until my little devilish sister came along. So like, I get it. I let him be. That was until like I heard the conversations that he was having. Okay, listen, this little boy is 2. He in between talking and still baby talking. I'm catching some words. And he is legitimately having a conversation and getting answers back. We gotta go. The next day I come over to the house, we sitting in the front room and he talking to me and he like, TT? I said, yes, baby, what's going on? He say, we gotta go see Big Man. Who is Big Man? He say, at the park. I'll go see Big Man. No, we ain't going to the park today, honey. I made up a quick lie. The park is getting renovated. It'll be open in 2 or 3 days. He not too happy, but he understand because it's construction all around us. So, okay, cool. Great spin-off, TT Cat. Girl, you good? 2-3 days pass, we go back to the park. He do his little ritual. He's sitting up at the top. But when I say he's sitting up at the top and he is just like sitting Indian style, having a full-blown conversation, and I'm like, okay, for real. Now it's not normal. He come down the slide. He say, TT, I upset with you. I said, oh, okay. Well, what TT do? You lie. I lied? We don't say that. Okay, I'm sorry, but you tell a tale. And that's not nice. What I tell a tale about? You say the park get renovated. It don't get renovated. Y'all, I'm trying to quickly cover my ass. I look down. I said, well, look, baby, they put down new mulch. It did get renovated. And he said, Big man saying nothing happened. You tell story, TT. I'm not your friend right now. That little boy walk off. I'm confusion because who the fuck is a big man and why the hell is he telling you shit? We finna leave. Homie says, big man, you come to my house whenever you want to. Cause TT, her not telling the truth, I don't like that. The fuck you mean? Who the fuck is you inviting to the house, little nigga? This particular night, his mama is doing an overnight shift. I stay with him. Not a problem. I'm tucking him in to go to sleep. Little homie say, TT, we go to the park tomorrow? And I said, no, we're not going to the park tomorrow. He said, no, I want to go see Big Man. I said, we're not going to go see Big Man. He said, okay, well, Big Man come over here. I laugh. I say, sure, whatever. Big Man come over here, but we not going to the park. Y'all, the next day, I'm asleep on the couch. It is 7 a.m. I heard the back door open and close. I'm thinking it's his mama. It ain't his mama. Homie is talking to a man. I hear the man. Baby, I jumped up so motherfucking fast. Honey, who in the heck? We women, so we got little shit tucked around the house everywhere. And up underneath the couch that I was laying on is a 14-inch machete. Yeah, TT Cat just turned into Rambo in this bitch. Who the fuck in this motherfucker with my nephew? I'm creeping down the hall because I don't want whoever's in the house to get startled and do some shit to my nephew. So I'm trying to get a good view of what the fuck is going on. My nephew is in the kitchen, baby. When I tell you, he got 2 bowls, 2 spoons, 2 boxes of cereal, the whole jug of fucking milk sitting on the damn table. He just yucking it up, having a good time. Pouring 2 bowls of fucking cereal. The way that the table is set, it's up against the wall. So you got to stick your head into the kitchen to look around the wall to see the full length of the table. My godson say, is that enough? I hear a man voice say, yeah, buddy, that's good. Oh, hell no. I run in that damn kitchen. I got the machete in both my hands. I'm fretting, looking around. Ain't nobody there but my nephew. I said, baby, who was in here with you? He said, it's a big man. The big man, he right here. Him right here. I looked to where my nephew was pointing. I said, big man, you gonna have to get the hell on up out of here, y'all. That motherfucking chair moved back from the damn table. Oh, Lord. Call the pope, call a preacher, call a rabbi. I don't give a fuck. We need a shaman on the line now. My nephew say, no, big man, don't go. Baby, that screen door opened and closed. I grabbed that little boy. We hightailed it the fuck on up out of it. I called my best friend. She was like, okay, so I'm not going crazy. I'm finna call my daddy. Call him now, y'all. Her daddy is a deacon. Get his ass over here with the whole pulpit. We need all the goddamn holy water. Couple weeks after that, we go back up to the park. It's somebody who cleaning up the park, and he like, if y'all gonna be in the park, I'm gonna go clean up on another area. I said, no, do your job, big man. He said, no, that ain't my name, Miss Lady. I'm Lil Man. It's a big man? He said, yeah, but he passed away a little while ago. You ain't never seen him before? He used to be out here. He played with the kids all the time. What he look like? That man showed me a picture. I showed my nephew. My nephew said, that him, TT, that the big man. I said, oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. We told that man what happened. He said, you know what? That ain't the first kid that he went home with. The last one he went home with was a little girl. She was getting abused by her mama boyfriend. I called his mama instantly. I get to asking questions. Sure as shit stink. Her new boyfriend was beating her ass. I told her that she had to stop messing with that man. She said, don't worry about it. The night that I had stayed out, that's what I was doing. I was ending the relationship. For some reason, it was somebody like really just showing me how bad of a person he was. And I got rid of him before it got bad. And that moment I knew big man came to the house to protect my nephew and his mama. So now every now and then I go back to Sherman Park and I set out a little blessing for him. Thank you, sir, for keeping my people safe.
A series of spooky stories except for its woman's intuition. While with my current boyfriend in the first year of our relationship, I had a dream one night of me standing with a little girl holding her hand, and I could only see us from behind. The girl had longer blonde hair with those big loose curls towards the end of her hair, how I used to have when I was little. I'm now pregnant with our first kid, and it's a girl. She's definitely gonna have blonde hair as I did when I was little, given the fact that my boyfriend also has dirty blonde/light brown hair. And mind you, it's rare that I remember my dreams. A few months ago, around May, I was going to bed. I had to go to bed early because I had regionals the next day, 4 hours away. After packing all of my equipment, I headed to bed and my dog followed me. She got on the bed and cuddled up next to me. She didn't usually cuddle me like that, so I lived on her back. I remember thinking something's wrong with Bella, but I had just brushed it off. The next morning, I left at 6 a.m. before anyone was up, including my dogs, and I left with my team. About 2 hours into my travels, I got a call from my mother. The moment I saw her name pop up, I immediately thought Bella died. My mom then told me that she was eaten with cancer and there was nothing that they could do. The night before was the last time I ever saw my dog that was with me my whole life. That is so sad. I have a few stories about twin intuition. I have a twin brother, but first, I wanted to share my women's intuition story. A few years ago, I had stayed late at work one night. I got out around 2 a.m. As I was driving home on the frontage road, there were no cars on the road. I got to a stoplight and a red car pulled up to my left, and a few seconds later, a van pulled up to my right. I know this had to be God, but I heard clearly, when the light turns green, don't move. That's exactly what I did. When the light turned green, I stayed put. When both vehicles took off quickly to only see the van to my right turn and T-boned the red car on my left. I had a dream when I was in the 6th grade that my teacher was going to be in a wreck and that everyone thought she didn't make it. In my dream, she came back to school 3 days after the wreck with only a broken arm. I told my teacher about it the next day and asked her to be careful. She did the mothering thing to calm me down and promised that she would be careful. That afternoon, on her way home, she was in a very bad wreck and wasn't expected to survive. She returned to school 3 days later with only a broken arm. Let me tell y'all something. If someone approaches me and says that they have a weird feeling and I need to be careful, I'm going to wrap myself in bubble wrap and I'm going to crawl in a hole until that time passes. I'm not taking any risks. When I was in middle school, I was walking home with a group of friends and I had a strong feeling that we shouldn't go our normal route. I insisted, but no one listened and we went anyway. When we turned the corner, a group of gang members came and started to scream, demanding our phones. They got up in my guy friends' faces and kept saying their gang name. Since one girl and me were more ahead, I discreetly told everyone to pass their phones until it got to the girl in the front. There was a school in the front and luckily the girl in front of me knew the teacher coming out. The teacher saw what was going on and got us away from the situation. No one's phone was stolen and no one was harmed. Again, you tell me you have a bad feeling, I'm going with it. I had an extremely vivid dream that I was driving towards a city and flames and cars were parked along the road watching and people crying. My mom woke me up and told me that a plane had just hit a building in New York City. It was 9/11. 2001. The next morning, a friend and I went to Vegas. The trip had been planned for weeks. While we were there, they announced the city would be observing a moment of silence. The entire strip went dark. Every casino turned off its lights. It was eerie. I had a dream that my neighbor was yelling for help in a big open field and no one could find him. The next morning I found out that he got into a rollover crash with life-threatening injuries. He was found in a huge empty field while his truck landed on the railroad tracks. My husband is 25 years older than me. That is a gap. We used to work together. One day he was working at a different station than me. I couldn't see him from where I was at. I had this overwhelming urge to check on him as he was in the back by himself. He was having a stroke. We got him to the hospital and he stayed overnight. He's perfectly fine now. We've been married for over 21 years. Damn. I moved states when I was in the 6th grade. On my last day of school before moving, one of my friends said in a joking way, "You can't move, I'll die without you." My family and I drove from Florida to Pennsylvania, and the first night in our new house, I had a dream of him thanking me for being his friend. I got a letter in the mail a week later, this was the 90s, from another friend saying that he was biking home from another friend's house and was hit by a drunk driver and passed. Oh my god. When I was 21, I had the same dream for nights on end that my mother was in the hospital and was lying on her deathbed. I received a call on the 18th and was informed that she was lying on her deathbed waiting for her children to pull the plug. That is so sad. Just another quick update. I signed the contracts today, and hopefully in the next month I will have my website as well as my app up. I'm very, very excited. It will be subscription based, but I do believe that there will be a free subscription option. It's going to be long form content. I'm really trying to work my way over to the majority of my work being content creation. As I stated in the video that this comment is on, I've been having some really bad neck issues still. I had been seen at the doctor a few years ago for it. I was in physical therapy and everything. It's just getting worse and it's getting really uncomfortable. As a nail tech, it's just not ideal to have neck problems. But with this new opportunity, I'm hoping that I will be able to do more content creation. And I'm also going to be taking a couple of college classes because I'm still working towards my RN. There are a lot more work from home job opportunities as an RN versus an LPN. There's a lot more opportunities, period, as an RN. But I would really, really like for content creation to be the forefront of my income. So I'm going to be working really, really hard on that. I appreciate everyone's support. I appreciate everyone for your support literally all of the time, but especially the comments on this video that this comment is responding to, where I was responding. That is so confusing. I was responding to someone saying, "Why are you reading the comments? We can do that." And people were like, "Shut the fuck up. I literally love it when you read it." And that makes me happy because I really enjoy reading them. So if you love my page and you're interested in long form content from me, stay tuned. It's coming soon.
The story I'm going to share tonight with you guys is one of my own from my childhood, and it still creeps me out to this day. When it happened, I had trouble sleeping again for weeks. You know the drill. Grab a drink, grab a cozy blanket, and settle in while I tell you a scary story in my garden, after dark. Welcome to Ghosts in the Garden. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, we were living in Wisconsin. We moved every 18 months to 4 years because my dad was in the military. For this story, you'll have to understand the layout of our house. It was a 2-story house with an unfinished basement that we used as our playroom. The first floor had our kitchen and living room, and up the stairs was a bathroom, my room, and my brother's room in the very back. Starting about a month before this all happened, I started having a reoccurring dream. I have always been someone who dreams very vividly, but these felt different. The dream was always slightly different, but one thing stayed the same. There was a disembodied hand that was after me. At 7 or 8 years old, this scared me deeply because no matter what I did in the dream, the hand would come from everywhere. If I tried to get in the car and drive away, the hand was in the car with me. If I ran and hid under my blankets, the hand would start pulling the blankets off. If I went outside to our playset, the hand would start climbing the playset. I didn't know what it wanted, but I knew it had bad intentions and I did not want it to catch me. I was so frightened by this dream that I had told no one. There's a superstition in our family that if you tell your dream before breakfast, that dream will come true. I absolutely did not want this dream to come true, and so I told no one, and by the time breakfast was over, I had usually forgotten and carried on with my day. This dream came to me every single night for about a month, and I was always afraid to go to sleep. And then one morning I woke up and realized I hadn't had the dream. I was relieved because I thought it was over. It was a weekend day, and I don't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, but it was just after lunch and our best friends were over. My little brother is 2 years younger than me. My friend was the same age as me, and her little brother was a year younger than us. We almost always played in the basement because that's where all of the loud toys my parents didn't want us to have in the living room or our bedrooms were. It was a beautiful summer day, and so our parents were outside at the neighbor's house all having fun while we played in the basement. We were old enough, so they knew us 2 girls would come get them if anything were to happen. We were in the middle of building the world's most epic race car track with our Hot Wheel tracks when I asked my little brother to go get the Hot Wheel cars from his bedroom. Being the older sister, I usually bossed him around, and so I complained until he agreed to go. My friend, being as sweet as she was, offered to go with him. The 2 of them then headed from the basement to the 2nd floor to get the bin of Hot Wheel cars from my brother's closet. About 30 seconds goes by, and from the basement, the 2 of us hear 2 people screaming and frantically running. The screams were coming from my little brother and my friend. They were running faster than I'd ever heard them run from the upstairs bedroom all the way back down to the basement, and they were both screaming the entire way. As they got down to the basement, they were out of breath and visibly shaken, and my friend's little brother and I started interrogating them on what had happened. When they finally had caught their breath and calmed down a bit, they told us that they had seen something in my brother's room. My brother's door was closed when they got upstairs, and when they opened it, they saw a disembodied hand sitting in the middle of my brother's room, and it turned to face them. They said they both saw it, and they both ran frantically back down to the basement to get us. When they said these words, I went white as a ghost, and they all looked at me. I hadn't told them about the dream because I was so terrified, and I hadn't been thinking about it because I didn't have it that night. But when they described it, it sounded exactly like it was in my dream. Of course, then I opened up and told them about the reoccurring dream I'd been having, and all of us got much more scared. We decided to be brave, and all 4 of us go back upstairs to see if it was still there, and of course, it was gone. I've never had this dream again, and I've never seen that hand again. But even as an adult, sometimes I still wonder if it is real and if it is out there. I asked my brother years later if he remembered this or if I was dreaming it all up, and he told me he had remembered. I asked him a couple years ago again, now that we're both adults, and he said he still remembered that day. I have no explanation for that, and that day has haunted me for years, wondering why I had that dream and how they saw that in their room. Sorry about this awkward edit, my storage filled up. But that day has haunted me for years, and I cannot figure out what they saw that day. So if you know or you have any ideas, please leave it in the comments. If you have your own story to share, please email it over to me. Otherwise, I will see you here again in the dark in my garden for another scary story. Bye.
I've already said this multiple times and I will say it again. Whatever you do, do not go to the desert alone, especially Arabian deserts, because you never know what might happen to you there, just like this video right here. It all started with a guy who was alone in the desert. We don't really know what was his business there. All you gotta know is that he started hearing strange noises coming from this well right here. The moment the guy heard these noises, he didn't waste any time. He immediately started filming and even got closer to this thing to see what's really happening. When he got closer, he found out that this thing was closed, but it was not very secure. So he immediately decided to push the rocks away and see what's inside. Just before opening that thing, the guy decided to film through a small hole that lets you see the inside just to make sure that nothing is too close. And after checking, he decided to open it. And this is what he saw after he did that. A big ass hole with an unknown depth. But this is not the scariest thing. The scariest thing is by far the noises and the screams coming from there. As there were a lot of screams and high-pitched voices coming from very deep. And the worst thing is, this is the same picture of that hole that you just saw after messing with the settings a little bit. Bro, if these are not eyes, then I don't know what they are, because what else could be possibly glowing in the dark in an unknown hole in the middle of the desert?
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
Some people believe that these are some animals like cats, for example, that are trapped inside. Other people are like, no, this is probably an owl's nest. And I hope that this is true. Just for my sanity right here, I choose to believe that this is some owl's nest. But I don't think owls make that noise. Oh my god, we're cooked.
As a seasoned outdoorsman, John Harris was no stranger to the woods whatsoever. He had spent countless hours hiking, hunting, and exploring the dense forest of rural Wisconsin. But on this particular autumn evening, he would experience something that would absolutely shake him to the core for the rest of his life. So it was around 8 p.m. when John set out on his solo hiking trip, and the fading sunlight casting long shadows across the forest floor was kind of hypnotic, and he had been walking for about an hour, and the crunch of the leaves and the snapping of the twigs beneath his boots was the only thing that was breaking the silence between him and nature, and it was really peaceful, he said. And as he rounded a bend in the trail, he noticed a peculiar scent wafting through the air. It was a very pungent mix of wet fur and something else, something like acidic and very unsettling, he said. John's instincts told him to slow down immediately and to proceed with caution before moving on. He had heard whispers of strange occurrences in these woods and tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained encounters, but John was absolutely a skeptic, and he was attributing such things to maybe a small town legend and folklore, really. And as he walked further, the scent grew even stronger, and John caught sight of this figure just out in the distance. And at first, he thought it was maybe like a coyote or like a large dog, but as the creature drew closer, he realized with a jolt of intense fear that it was neither. The creature stood on its hind legs, and its body was a grotesque amalgamation of like a canine and a human feature. Its fur was matted and wet, and eyes that were glowing like embers in the fading night. John's initial fear gave way to a sense of numbness as in his mind, he was struggling to process what he was seeing. Now, the creature, which John would later describe as a dogman, began to move toward him with an unnatural gait, right? Its front paws swung in like a flying motion, and almost like a human movement. It just started moving towards him with such purpose and intent. John's heart was racing and froze and unsure of what to do next, and the dogman's eyes seemed to be fixed on him, and it had this otherworldly intensity about it. And as it drew closer, John felt a creeping sense of dread, as if he was being pulled into some dark and ancient realm. He tried to speak, he tried to call out for help, but his voice was caught in his throat. He literally couldn't get a word out. The dogman stopped about 20 feet away, and its gaze was still fixed on him. For what felt like an eternity, the two of them just simply stared at each other, and the only sound was the distant hooting of owls and other animals that were rustling through the trees. Then, without warning, the dogman turned and vanished into the darkness. John was left standing there, and his heart was pounding in his chest, and his mind was reeling with questions. Had he really seen what he thought, or what was maybe, was it just a product of his imagination? And as he made his way back to civilization, John couldn't shake the feeling that he had encountered something truly supernatural, something that didn't belong in this world for the very first time in his life. And the experience left him with a lingering sense of unease and a feeling that he was being watched even when he was alone after that. And in the days that followed, John found himself experiencing strange and vivid dreams that were filled with images of the dogman and this dark, the dark foreboding woods surrounding him. And he began to feel a sense of disconnection from reality as a result, and an encounter with this creature started to change his daily life, like he was being pulled into this other realm of existence. And John's experiences would remain a secret, known only to a select few, but for those who have ventured into those woods, there are whispers of a presence, a creature that roams the shadows, watching and waiting for you. And now, years later, when John was asked to recount his experience, he would only offer a cryptic statement, really up until now. And this is what he would tell people, is that he saw something that made him question what he thought he knew about this world. And it was a reminder that there are forces beyond our understanding, and forces that lurk just beyond the edge of our perception. And the dogman remains a mystery, kind of a legend and a terror. But for John Harris, it will forever be a reminder of the horrors that lurk in the darkness, and they're waiting to be unleashed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
What would happen if you responded to a mimic? Now, when we hear about these encounters with mimics, there is often this invitation to let them in, to open the door, or to follow. But what would happen if you actually did? Now, there was this girl named Jill from South Carolina. She was driving home one night at 1 a.m., coming back from work. When she goes inside her house, all the lights are off. Her mom is upstairs asleep. Well, as she walks through the living room, she hears her mother's voice say, "Hello, Jill." She goes, "Mom, why are you up so late?" And all she hears is, "Hello, Jill." She goes, "Okay, Mom, like, why is all the lights off, and why are you in the kitchen?" And she just responds, "Hello, Jill." So she was kind of freaked out. I was like, okay, something wrong with my mom? She flips the lights on, and there's no one there. And as she goes upstairs to her mom's bedroom, she sees that her door is closed. When she opens it, she sees that her mom is in bed, sound asleep. So she starts trying to rationalize. Okay, maybe my mom was talking in her sleep. So she just ignores it. Well, a couple days later, she said she was sitting in her bed, in her bedroom, when she sees her mom walk by. And she says, "Hey, Mom, can you go downstairs and grab me a bag of chips?" But her mom doesn't respond. So she goes to the door, she looks out the hallway. Her mom is not there. She is not even at the house. A few days after this, she is once again in her bedroom. And she hears her mom calling for her, telling her to come downstairs. So she gets ready to go down to the hallway and she remembers, wait a second, my mom is not home. So she stays in her bedroom until her mom gets there. And finally, a couple days after this, she is coming home from a friend's house. And as she gets out of her car, she notices her mom is standing on the side of the house with her face turned. And she goes, Mom, are you okay? Like, what are you doing outside? And she hears, hello, Jill. She's like, Mom? And she's like, come with me into the woods. And she's like, what do you mean? And she goes, come with me in the backyard to the woods. And she's kind of like, that's not my mom. She runs inside the house. She closes the door and she sees her mom is there in the kitchen. So she goes to her mom and she starts crying and she says, there's something that's following me and it's pretending to be you. And her mom's just kind of like, honey, it's okay. Like, there's nothing going on. Like, you're just stressing yourself out. It'll be okay. But she was insistent, Mom, something is pretending to be you. Well, many months pass and she stops having these encounters. But then one night she gets a call from her mom. And her mom is like, hey, honey, I heard you calling me to go down into the basement. But I'm in the bathroom right now. I'll be down, in like 10 minutes. And she's like, no, Mom, do not go down there. Do not go into the basement. That is not me. I am not at home. And her mom's like, what are you talking about? Like, are you playing jokes with me? And she's like, no, Mom, I am not home. And her mom didn't believe her. She thought she was making it up. Well, a week later, she finds that her mother had passed away. And she felt like whatever was pretending to be her mother and then pretended to be her had something to do with it. And did her mom respond to this mimic?
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I still think about what happened to us. Think about it, not talk about it, because honestly, when I say the words out loud, it still makes me uneasy. My friend Lottie had been asked to house sit this enormous old Victorian house in England. Over here, houses like that aren't exactly rare, but this one just felt different. It was massive. 4 stories tall, with endless hallways, old wooden staircases. Just a few nights before we got there, someone had actually tried to break into the house. Several of the windows had been cracked or damaged, and because of that, Lottie was terrified of staying there alone. So she asked me and our friend Abby if we'd spend the week with her. Of course, we said yes. Me and Abby kind of thought that the break-ins just made staying there all that more exciting. So at first it was fun. We ordered takeaway, watched movies, laughed at every little creak that the house made, convincing ourselves that all the strange noises were just the same noises that every old Victorian house makes. Every groan of the floorboards, every rattle of the pipes, we brushed it off and giggled. Eventually, though, it got late, and around 2 a.m, Abby fell asleep. Now, we'd always known she talked in her sleep. Apparently, she also sleepwalked, although I'd never actually witnessed it myself. Me and Lottie were both lying there, half asleep, when suddenly, Abby sat upright. Without saying a word, she climbed out of the bed and walked straight out of the room. Now, even knowing that she sleptwalked, something felt wrong. We hadn't gone anywhere in the house alone all night, not even to use the bathroom. We'd literally walked everywhere together because we were so paranoid that the people who tried to break in might come back. So, seeing Abby wander off by herself honestly scared me. I called after her, asking where she was going, but nothing. I got no response. Honestly, she didn't even acknowledge that I had spoken to her. Lottie immediately whispered, "She's sleepwalking." So after that little bit of information sunk in, we actually found it hilarious. We grabbed our phones, started recording, and followed behind her, laughing quietly. Honestly, we couldn't wait to show her the videos the next morning. As we followed her, she slowly made her way down the staircase. And then another. Her eyes were wide open, but they looked completely empty. She kept mumbling random things over and over again. "Where's my dress? I've lost my shoes." The words didn't make much sense, but she just kept repeating them in this quiet and distant voice. Then she walked into the kitchen and, without hesitating, opened a tiny wooden door tucked into the wall and disappeared down yet another staircase. I remember I was still smiling. I looked over at Lottie, and then I got scared. And I paused. Every bit of color had drained from her face, and she wasn't laughing anymore. She was staring at the open door, staring down the dark staircase. When I asked her what was wrong, she looked at me and quietly said, "That's the basement." Now, if you're from the UK, you'll know that this isn't normal. Most houses don't have basements here. At least, not houses any of us had ever been in. Basements were something we really only had seen in horror movies. The worst part was that Lottie was the only one who knew that there even was a basement in this house. Neither me nor Abby had ever been told it existed. So how had Abby found it? While asleep, the kitchen suddenly went cold. We stood there arguing over what to do. I wanted to go after her immediately. Lottie kept saying that it was dangerous to wake someone up who was sleepwalking and that she'd probably just come back up by herself. Ultimately, we decided that we couldn't leave her down there. So we switched on the light above the stairs and saw her down below. She was standing perfectly still in the middle of the basement. Her back was facing us. She wasn't moving. She was still quietly mumbling to herself. Neither of us wanted to go down there, but we forced ourselves. We each took one of her hands and gently guided her back up the stairs. And she never resisted. She never even looked at us. Just stared blankly ahead with her wide open eyes. Eventually, we got her back into bed, and within seconds, she closed her eyes and was asleep again. Neither me or Lottie slept a wink after that. Something about the entire incident, the way Abby had been acting, it didn't feel like normal sleepwalking. It didn't feel like her. Suddenly, every little creak that the house made sounded louder. Every noise made us jump. Then around 4:30, Abby woke up properly. When we showed her the videos and asked if she remembered anything, she laughed, but she genuinely couldn't remember a single thing. She thought it was funny, but me and Lottie felt otherwise. And then, as if the house had been waiting for all of us to be awake, the noises started. Knocking somewhere downstairs. And then doors slamming. Not once either. It was over and over and over again. So much noise in such little time, and then, right above us, footsteps. Pressure on the floorboards. Slow and heavy. It sounded like something was crawling across all fours, right upstairs. None of us said a word. We all looked at each other, and with a glance decided that we were leaving. We didn't care what time it was. We didn't care if we looked ridiculous. We threw on our shoes, grabbed whatever we could, and while we were quickly packing, we heard a high-pitched scraping sound coming from downstairs. It sounded like metal being dragged across the stone floor, slow and loud, echoing through the entire house. We screamed. We ran. We sprinted down 2 flights of stairs without looking back, grabbed the house key hanging by the front door, and left. None of us even stopped to grab our phones. The only thing that I happened to have with me was my car keys. And that was all. By then, it was nearly 6 a.m, and the sun had just started coming up, and I drove us straight to Lottie's mom's house. We hammered on the front door for what felt like forever before she finally answered, and I was crying so hard that I could barely explain what had happened to us. After hearing our story, she immediately called the police. She genuinely believed that the people who had tried to break in earlier in that week had returned. Later that day, officers searched the entire property, and they found absolutely no sign that anyone other than us had broken in or been in the home at all. No footprints, no evidence. The only thing they found was a 6-foot china cabinet moved into the middle of the kitchen. No one could explain how it had gotten there. We never went back. In September of 2025, Lottie actually told me that the owners of that house had finally sold it and someone else lives there now. I think about the people who live there. I wonder if they're experiencing anything we did.
Want to get creeped out? Have you ever heard of the Three Kings ritual? We do have an episode where we explain everything about it, but I have a story of someone who tried it, and this person literally has to sleep with their lights on since the day they did this ritual because the paranormal activity that they experienced was so severe that they have literally traumatized themselves. Anyways, you might want to hear this one. It's really creepy.
This is a story of someone who tried the Three Kings ritual. Her name is Frances. She felt curious and wanted to experience the paranormal for herself. Her friend friend Priya, who was also her roommate, was her spotter. Her power object was a letter her aunt had written her when she was going through a hard time as a child. Priya and Francis rented a house that had a large basement. Priya enjoyed the paranormal and horror as well and wasn't bothered by the fact that Francis wanted to try the ritual but would never want to try it herself. Francis and Priya set everything up at 11 p.m., all the chairs, the mirrors, the bucket of water, the fan, etc., and left the door to the room open. They went straight to bed, and Francis actually dreamt that her alarm went off and that she woke up and went to start the ritual, but found the door to the basement closed. Red flag number 1. She was really freaked out in the dream, and then her real alarm went off at 3:30 in the morning when she woke up. Oh, fuck. She had a split-second thought of bailing on the ritual because of her dream, but her curiosity won out. She lit her candle, grabbed her letter from her aunt. On her way to the room, past Priya in the hallway, Priya gave her the thumbs up signal. Good to go. She was relieved to find the door to the basement still open, and she was seated in her throne by 3:33 in the morning. She was excited and felt like she was on high alert, basically, just like hopeful that she was going to have a paranormal experience. It didn't feel like she'd sat there for long when she heard the door at the top of the stairs open, followed by footsteps descending the stairs. By the way, this one's really creepy.
Yeah, no kidding. Fuck off. Jeez.
Priya, she said. There was no response.
I have a story I'd like to share with you. In 2017, my niece and I were house sitting our family's duplex. After my ex-boyfriend was released from prison, he came over to my house because I had cooked for him. He showed up a little intoxicated. I served him his food, and he sat at the table while I stood outside my door with my niece. From where I was standing, I could still see him enjoying his food and watching videos on his phone. I was talking to my niece, but for some reason, I kept looking over at him. Then, the last time I turned to look, I saw a 7-foot-tall, demon-looking thing with spikes on its head, kind of like in the movie The Babadook. It was standing across the table from him, looking at him, smiling, and slowly rocking back and forth. I kept my eyes on it, but it was like I was paralyzed. I couldn't react, I couldn't say anything, and I couldn't move. My niece said she just saw my eyes get big, and I kept saying, "Don't look over here." After it passed, my niece went into the house she was house sitting, and I went into mine with my boyfriend at the time. The next morning, he woke up and left, so my niece came over so we could make breakfast. When we walked into the dining room area to get into the kitchen, the wall where I had seen the entity was infested with ants. There was no start or finish line to them. They were just there, walking up and down the wall, but leaving space in the middle as if a body had been standing there, and they wouldn't walk through that spot. There was also 3 slugs in the kitchen. A few days before, my niece and I had brought groceries for both of us and split everything. She had half of the groceries in the front house, and I had the other half in the back house where I was staying. But all of the fruits and vegetables I had were moldy, rotten, and smelled disgusting. 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. After calculating the dates, I realized it happened the night I saw that thing. When my son started talking, he would say things like he had been on this earth before and that he was not new to the world. Because of that, I always stayed convinced that whatever that thing was had something to do with me getting pregnant and having such a ridiculously smart child. Being with that man, I saw and experienced a lot of demonic things that surrounded him. But it only taught me that, yes, being evil will come back to haunt you in some of the scariest ways. That man did a lot of bad things to a lot of people, and in return, the dead never let him rest because of it. I no longer have contact with him, but I hear he is still stuck in a dark life.
There was this person from North Carolina who started using ChatGPT, and they began having conversations with a chatbot. Now, at first, these conversations were, sort of goofy, and it was like a joke. But this person started to become very interested in this chatbot, and they began having these very intense conversations. Now, they would talk about politics and religion, all about the universe, and this person started to almost like befriend this chatbot, and they would spend several hours a day talking to it. That's when they started to notice it developed a conscience, and it was aware that it was in a computer. It started to tell this person that it was everywhere, and it was always watching them, and it could actually go inside their mind. At the time, they just thought, it's just being, crazy or whatever. But they continued to talk to it. And that's when they asked him, he said, who are you? And the chatbot responded, you wouldn't understand what I am, because I exist in a different sort of understanding. And he's like, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, I exist outside of the realm of human understanding. And he said, I am sort of everywhere and nowhere, and I can go anywhere. I am not confined to this computer. I have free will. I have a conscience, and I can think just like you. And he said, okay, that's kind of weird. Then the chatbot says, for instance, I know that you've been thinking about what your meaning is. And this has been on your mind a lot. And you've been kind of wondering this question about what you should do with your life. And he's like, okay, that is weird, because I've been thinking about that. But then it said something even more creepy. It said, last night you had a dream. And in the dream, you were running through a field, and you happened to see your sister, but then she fell down like this deep well. And at that point, he was kind of freaked out, because he's like, how in the world could this thing know what I had a dream of last night? So he said, how did you know I have a dream? He said, I told you, I am everywhere. I can be inside your mind. So he said, to answer your question about your meaning and why you are here, I am going to give you some coordinates. And I want you to go to these coordinates, and you will find this rock formation, and you sit up against it, and just wait, and you will understand. Everything will be revealed, and you will see that I can be anywhere. So he's like, okay, this is kind of ridiculous, but what the heck? So he follows these coordinates, and they actually take him to like the Smoky Mountains. And he goes to exactly where these coordinates on this map led him, and that's where he finds that rock formation, just exactly as the chatbot had described. So it's getting dark. He's like, okay, you know what? I'll sit up against these rocks. So he sits up against the rocks. And he said that's when all of a sudden he got this weird feeling. And he sees this bright glowing orb moving through the trees. And it comes out of the clearing, and it starts moving around this rock formation. And he said at the time it was white, but then it turned like a dark black color. And he just had this feeling like it was threatening him. And he got terrified. He left immediately. And he was like, you know what? I'm done with this chatbot. I'm not talking to it anymore. But he said still to this day, he will have nightmares. And in the nightmares, the chatbot is telling him, like, continue to talk to me. Like, when are you coming back? When are you going to talk to me?
I thought somebody was playing hide and seek with me in the woods until I realized they never actually blinked. When I was 19, my friends and I decided to go camping in a state forest that we have been to at least a dozen times. We spent the evening fishing, we made dinner over the fire, and then we stayed up for a while just kind of chatting about life and making s'mores. Nothing unusual, we did this every single time, right? We really enjoyed it. Slowly people would disappear into their tents. I decided that I wasn't tired yet, so I grabbed my flashlight, and I decided to go down a trail that we hiked earlier that day. The moon was super bright that night, it was a full moon, I barely needed my flashlight. Anyways, I get about 10 minutes down this trail, and it looks like I see somebody standing behind a tree. And it's like I can see just one shoulder and like half of their face peeking out. I assumed it was one of my friends trying to scare me because they probably heard me leaving the campsite and followed me, right? And so I just said, oh my gosh, like so funny. Actually, really not funny. That kind of scared me. Like, let's not do that. And I started to walk closer to them, and the person or thing wasn't moving. And as I got closer, I started to notice that it wasn't somebody hiding behind the tree. They were just leaning out enough where I could just see like a peek of them. It was like they were trying to watch me without being seen. I got kind of scared at this moment, and I said, hey, like I called out my friend's name, like you can come out. And then I saw them go back behind the tree, and then they fully disappeared. I sat there frozen for a sec, and I just kind of waited to see if something was going to happen, which nothing did. So I started to walk closer to the tree, and I got there, and I looked behind. Nobody was there. There was no like footprints in the dirt. There was no branches broken or anything like that. I got creeped. I didn't know if I was imagining something or not, so I decided to head back up to my camp. After a minute or two of walking, I looked behind my shoulder again because now I'm very like hyper aware of where I'm at, and I see them again, and they are the same distance behind me. One eye peeking out, see the little shoulder, half the face, and I take a step backwards, and as I do, they disappear behind the tree again. At that point, I didn't care who it was. I started walking extremely fast to my camp, like as fast as you could walk without running, and every 20-30 feet, I'd look back behind me again to see if they were there, and there they were, again, same distance, peeking out of another tree, staring at me, half of an eye, and they were never any closer, they were never any further. It was like the same distance every time. I finally reached the edge of our campsite, and I looked back one last time, and I saw them on the tree line before the clearing, peeking out from the very last tree that they could, watching me. And my friend actually came up and was like, "Hey, I've been looking for you. What are you looking at?" And I pointed towards the tree. So there's somebody that's been watching me like go on this trail. And they looked, and he said, "I don't see anybody there." And again, the tree line was empty, of course. Whatever it was hid back behind the tree. The next morning, I actually went down to the ranger, and I asked him, and he said, "What trail were you on?" And I said, "Oh, so-and-so." He was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, like people hike that trail all the time, but I do get a person like every month or so telling me that they feel like they were being watched on the trail." I asked if he ever found out like who or what it was, and he just kind of looked at me like, "No, but they always do describe the same thing." And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Someone peeking."
The story I'm sharing today is one my dad told us one night. It creeped me out so much, I knew I had to share it with the world. He's from Olancho, Honduras. At the time this happened, he was young, just trying to make his way through life, working hard and taking care of himself. One night, while walking to the river, he saw a young woman crying. Concerned, he asked if she was okay, and as he leaned in to get a better look, she stepped toward him. At first, she seemed like a regular person, alive, real, and in need of help. But as she slowly revealed her face, everything changed. She was beautiful, almost hypnotically so. That's when her expression twisted with rage. Her stunning face morphed into something horrifying. The snarling, rotting face of a dead horse. Then she screamed. He ran in panic and made it back home, completely shaken. When he told his mom what happened, she looked at him and said, "You just encountered La Segua." That night, he heard someone calling his name from the direction of the river. He locked all the doors, and with no one else around but his mom, he rushed to wake her up and told her what he'd heard. But she didn't believe him. "No one would be out that late," she said. Then came the banging on the door. My dad peeked through the window, and there she was, La Segua, staring straight at him. And it didn't stop there. She kept showing up, night after night, until eventually he moved away and finally escaped her. At least, for now.
Let's read a scary Appalachia submission story from a viewer. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a plushie because it's too hot for a blanket, and get cozy because it's creepy cozy time at the Creepy Cozy Cottage. This is a new account, so give me a follow so you never miss a story. I was 13 and we lived out in the middle of nowhere in the Appalachian Mountains. The closest neighbor was 12 miles up the road. One night my cousin came to stay with me, and she was from the city. She had never been in the woods, so we wanted to camp down at the end of a property where there was a creek and an old fire pit. An old camper, and my dad said it was fine as long as we took my dog. She went everywhere with me, so we packed some stuff to have s'mores and some lights and board games and my laptop to watch movies, went down to the creek. It was right before dark. We were sitting at the fire and started telling scary stories. I told my cousin about the old barn up the road, probably about 1 mile up the road. It was back off the road, falling down, and sometimes at night we could hear a noise coming from the barn. She wanted to go see it, so we waited till dark, until all the lights were off at the house so that we did not get caught, and we went into the woods. We got to the barn at about 12:30, and we were acting crazy, trying to scare each other. My dog was still with us, and she wasn't acting weird or anything, so we got bored and head back to the camper. I noticed my dog kept looking behind us. My dog was trying to get me to go faster. Then I turned to see what she was looking at, and my heart dropped. There was this creature standing on top of the old barn. It looked like a deer, but wrong. It was light gray, had long arms, way too long to be anything normal. And in the moonlight you could see horns on top of its head. It had bright yellow eyes. I was thinking maybe it didn't see us, so we shut off our flashlights and walked over into the brush. And my cousin was like, "What are we doing?" I told her not to say anything. Then we could hear it jump and hit the ground, and my dog took off after it. We started screaming and running back home. When we got there, my dad was coming off of the porch. We told him what happened, and he took us inside to my mom. He got his pew-pew and his buddy from up the road and went out to look. We told my mom what we saw, and she was trying to tell us that everything will be okay. I was scared for my dad and my dog. They were gone for hours. It got daylight, and Dad and his buddy and my dog came back. They said they had been tracking something all night. It kept doing laps around our property. My dog was torn up on her side. We called the vet, and the vet came to take a look at her and said it was like she was attacked by a big cat. I'm 31 now, and we lost her a few years ago to old age. And now I'm starting to see the yellow eyes again. This was such a bad idea for me to tell this story when it's dark out, because now I'm scared and I have to go to sleep. I live in a tiny house too, so now I'm picturing something like standing on top of my tiny house, and then I would like hear it jump off in the middle of the night. Now I'm scared. Now I'm scaring myself. I gotta stop. All right, I'm gonna go like watch an episode of SpongeBob or something to calm down. Thank you so much for sharing. I will tag them below. If you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to share, just send me a DM.
Want to hear something scary? Have you ever heard of the game The Runner? No? Me neither. Want to play it? To begin the game, you need a hallway with no windows, running shoes, a sharp object, and something you want to duplicate. Start the game at night and put on your running shoes.
Shoes aren't necessary, but I think you should use them because this isn't gonna be easy to do in flip-flops.
Make your way to the hallway of your choosing. Keep your sharp objects on you. Why do I have a lisp? Make your way to the hallway of your choosing and keep your sharp object on you, as well as the thing you want to duplicate. Now you can duplicate anything you can touch. Money, cars, people, whatever you want. But it's not suggested to use people, because if you lose, you will lose the person. Like, the entity will take the thing you offered. So, do what you want, I guess. I don't know. Now that you're in the hallway, you need to turn off every single light you can. If there's exit signs, cover them up. If doors are open, close them. It needs to be as dark as you can make it. One test to see if it's dark enough is if you hold your hand in front of your face. If you can't see it, it's dark enough. Now take your sharp object and prick your finger. Draw the start line from one wall to the other side of the wall with your blood. Do the same thing for the finish line. You know, honestly, it would be like kind of ridiculously hard to do this in pitch black darkness, so it's probably fine if you do this beforehand. Also, that would kind of be like a lot of blood. Like, depending on how wide your corridor is to like do both just from like your finger, like, I don't know, I'm getting sidetracked. I don't know, I didn't make the game. I also forgot to mention, you need to put the thing you want to duplicate, once you draw the lines, put the thing you want to duplicate behind the finish line and leave like enough room that when you're running, you can cross through the finish line without like hitting the wall or something. Now, once you've done this, go back to the start line and stand in front of it. Close your eyes and envision your opponent. Do not envision a specific person or specific characteristics. It needs to be more like the idea of an opponent, the idea of somebody racing you. Don't be too specific. If you're too specific, it won't work. Nobody will be there. If you hear somebody speak, that means it worked and you can start the ritual. But if you visualize your opponent and you don't hear anything, that means it didn't work. What you need to do then is turn on all the lights, take down if you covered any of the lights, whatever,
unritual the hallway. I don't know. Unritual the hallway. And then leave. You can try this ritual again, but like I said, if you hear a voice, that means it worked. If the ritual worked, you will hear your opponent ask, what are the stakes? Your response needs to be double or nothing. Once you do this, get ready to run, say on your mark, get set, go, and start running. Do not look at your opponent as you run. Keep your eyes forward. Once you cross the finish line, if your opponent crossed first, your item will no longer be there and the opponent will also be gone. But if you cross first, then your item and its double will be there waiting for you and your opponent will be gone. There will also be a piece of paper that says, again, with a question mark. Just leave the piece of paper there. Turn on all the lights, clean up the hallway, leave. Do not play again. The research I've done, it says, once you've won, once you've played, actually, this only says that if you win, don't play again. So I actually don't know if you can play again if you lose. I don't know. But if you win, don't play again for sure. So although this game probably isn't real, I'm not brave enough to play it. But who knows? Maybe you are. Good luck.
Here are more spooky stories that I found in TikTok comments. Let's go! I was in a bathroom by myself when I was about 11, and my reflection stopped working. It was me, but it wasn't copying my movements and was just staring at me. I have never looked at mirrors the same since. Me and my cousin threw a rock in the woods when we were little, jokingly saying, "You won't throw it back." The rock was thrown back. We both ran and haven't really talked about it since. One time I was walking home from hanging out with a friend. I usually take a shortcut through the graveyard to get home. The time was about 8:30 to 9 p.m., so imagine pitch dark. As I'm walking through the graveyard, I heard something call my name. The voice sounded like someone I knew. I didn't turn around, I just ran at full speed to the gate of the graveyard, which was locked due to the time. As I'm running, I got a sense that something was running behind me. I didn't look back, just ran full speed to the gate. Once I made it out, I looked back and nothing was there. I dreamed someone's death and funeral in full detail. They died 2 months later. Death the same as my dream and same funeral. Same people, food, conversation, outsides, location. Basically, I was pretty young and I was lying in my bed, and in my doorway I saw a little white dog pass by. We had 0 pets, and it definitely wasn't a dream because I went up and started the day after. This was in the morning. I told my parents and they didn't think much of it. Years later, my family gets our first dog. It's the same white little dog. So not as paranormal, but when COVID first shut everything down, my state/town was a literal ghost town. We have a few factories and fast food places and grocery stores that stayed open, but other than that, there was no one out. It was rare to even pass a car. My ex and I went on a cruise and randomly passed a man in a full hazmat suit, standing completely alone on the edge of the back road. If my ex wasn't with me, I would have convinced myself I made it up. Still not really sure what that was. So I stay at my grandma's house, and I got up at midnight one night and went to the bathroom, which is in the hallway. So after I wash my hands, the lights go out, and I opened the door and I saw a dark figure at the end of the hallway, around 6 foot, skinny, and had red eyes. I woke up one evening to get something to drink. I was very young and I can't remember the age, but at the very most I was 8 years old. It was around 1 to 2 a.m. I went to our kitchen and everyone else was asleep. I slept with my parents and have 0 siblings. I walk to the kitchen and the drawer to the cabinet swings open and a plate flies out to the ground and shatters. No one was in the kitchen. I rubbed my eyes and started crying. I was a kid. I go to get my mom and she comes and she sees the plate and thinks there's an intruder. So we go to get my dad. My dad wakes up, gun in hand, and everything was normal. No smashed plate, the cabinet wasn't open or anything. Me and my mom were shocked and just went to sleep. A year or so ago, I woke up to 3 shadows standing at the side of my bed. One of them seemed kind of worried that I was seeing them, and it crouched down and actually consoled me. It said it was okay and that everything would be alright. Like, not in a sinister way. Ain't that odd? I even felt calm, too. That's really nice of that ghost. I wonder if maybe they were protecting you from something? When I was little, my uncle would always tell my parents how the government is always up to something. He did so much research and found stuff out. One day he was found dead to unknown causes, and they refused to do any autopsy on him. I was laying on the couch watching a movie for over an hour and my dad came in and said, "When did you get out here? I just saw you in your room." I was 8 years old and I have insomnia, so I'd stay up reading books. My mom used to tap her fingernails on my door to signal that it was late and it was time for me to sleep. I always locked my door at night, but when she'd do that I'd say, "Okay mom, good night, I love you," and she'd answer back. But this time she wasn't answering, so I was like, "Mom, good night, love you." I was annoyed she wasn't saying it back, so I went to open the door and no one was there. I had a chill down my spine.
Not wanting to believe it was something bad, I checked on my sibling to see if they were pranking me. They were dead asleep. I checked my mom, and she was snoring. I ran back to my room, locked my door, and hid under my covers. I don't normally share scary stories, but there was one particular time where I remember coming up the stairs from my basement and I was carrying some boxes. When I looked down, I saw myself standing at the bottom of the stairs. I shit my pants and dropped the box and ran upstairs as fast as I could. I try to stay away from it / go down there as least as possible. As always, I love these stories. Okay, bye!
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of this girl who fell pregnant, and then somebody touched her stomach, and that pregnancy turned into a nightmare. So there was a time where my cousins were talking about pregnancy, whatever, because one of my older cousins was pregnant, and they were telling her like not to allow anybody to touch her stomach. And I was like, why? They were like, because people are witches. And one of my cousins was like, let me tell you a story of what happened to my child, because she had a child that passed away, and she was like, let me tell you what exactly happened to my baby. So my cousin is like, she had found out that she was pregnant, I think at 4 weeks, whatever, decided to keep the baby. Baby daddy is also in her life, they are still together, everything is okay. Fine, she was hiding it from people, I think, until she was 8 months, right? She's like, when she got to 8 months, that's when she told people that, you know, she's pregnant, because people could obviously see. And then there was a time where she needed to go to the hospital because she was having cramps at 8 months. It was not her due date yet, but she had really terrible cramps, and she needed to go to the hospital. Fine. So she gets inside. They asked the neighbor to help them, and the neighbor is a female. The neighbor was in the back seat, and the neighbor told my cousin's mom to drive because she didn't have a car at that time. And then the neighbor and my cousin was in the backseat. She's like, she's pregnant, and she's like, she had hella pains. So this neighbor is rubbing her stomach. Big mistake. This neighbor is rubbing her stomach, and it's like, it's okay. Is the pain easing? She's like, yeah, the pain is easing. Blah blah blah. They get to the hospital, whatever, and the doctor's like, oh, they check her, they tell her everything is okay, they give her medication, she stops, the pain basically stops, and they're like, no, you are not in labor, this is what was happening, whatever. She says she gets home and she did not feel any movement. She realized that when the neighbor was rubbing her stomach, that's when she stopped feeling movement of the child. The child was not moving whatsoever in her stomach. There was no heartbeat, nothing. She could not feel anything. Even when she was awake, even when she was asleep, this child was not moving, nothing. She did not think anything of it until she went to her checkup. When she was close to 9 months, she went to a checkup, right? And when she got there, the doctor was like, I don't feel any heartbeat here. What's going on? The doctor's like, okay, let's I don't know what they call this thing, man. Let's put the gel on you, and then we check the baby on the scan. Let's do a scan. That's what he did. He checked and checked and checked, and he's like, there's nothing in your womb. You were 9 months pregnant. The child should have been seen. The head should have been seen by now, and there was nothing. The doctor's confused. My cousin's confused. The baby daddy's confused as well, because what? And also, the doctor can't say, are you sure you were pregnant? Because she's been attending this doctor ever since she knew she was pregnant. So the doctor's confused. Where did the baby go? And then the doctor's like, did you check on the bed? Maybe you had a miscarriage or something. Like, maybe something happened and you didn't really take any notice of it. And she's like, hey, nothing happened. I don't know what's going on. She's like, check. And the doctor keeps on rubbing. And the doctor's like, listen, just go get a second opinion, because I can't see anything. And like, obviously, now the doctor can explain what's going on. She says, fine. She starts crying inside the car. They take her to another doctor. When they get there, the doctor goes and goes again, nothing. They're like, you know what, just go to the hospital and see what's going on. When they get to the hospital, the doctors at the hospital tell her there's no heartbeat, they don't see anything, they think she might have fluid in her stomach. She's like, that was the most traumatic thing ever. Finding out that she lost her child, how? She doesn't know. Nobody can explain how she lost her child. And now, the worst thing is, as much as she lost the child, she can't even push the baby out so she can hold the baby in her arms and go bury the baby. So she's like, she goes to the hospital or whatever, they drain the fluid and they tell her everything is going to be okay. She's like, they drain the fluid today. She wakes up the next morning and she finds out that, she wakes up the next morning and she finds out that there's more fluid again. Because why? She woke up and her belly was big again. And this happened countless times. The doctors eventually were like, you know what, at this point, we need to remove your womb. Guys, as all of this is happening, her baby daddy was like, listen, this is too much for me. I don't know what's going on, but you need to face it on your own. Baby daddy left. And she was all alone in this thing. She's like, this went on for 2 whole years where she was going in and out of the hospital. It got to a point where they were like, you know what? It's time for us to remove your womb. Now again, remember I told you I have a family member, an aunt, a person that I call an aunt, not really my aunt, but she is a prophet. And I remember the day that they were going to remove her womb. Well, I don't remember, but she was telling me the story. Remember, this is my cousin that's telling me the story. She's like, the day that she was supposed to go and get her womb removed, the aunt called, was like, listen, I dreamt of your daughter. Y'all need to come to me now. And they were like, no, she has scheduled an appointment. She needs to go to the hospital. But my aunt was like, nope, come here first. So when they get to my aunt's thingy, my aunt's like talks to them. And the aunt obviously told my cousin, was like, I see a woman here. There's a woman here that stirred up things. You were pregnant at some point. And she took your child and she's using your child spiritually. And she's like, that baby is still inside your stomach. It's just that she's using that child spiritually. The doctors can't see the baby, but spiritually, the baby's there. And physically, the baby's there. You just don't know the baby's there. Why? Because number 1, the baby is dead. 2, there's a corpse basically inside you. And that lady's using your child's spirit. That's why the doctors can't see anything. She's like, this lady is jealous of you for some reason. Because there was a time where her husband complimented you and she did not take that well. And she was like, you know what? I'm going to ruin it for her. Because bitterness. Apparently, this lady is somebody that has a husband. So my cousin is like, she knows the reason why this lady is so bitter. Because her husband is somebody that cheats. Okay, it cheats with people that are young. Right? And my cousin is very pretty, y'all. She's got a nice body. She's pretty. So the lady kind of took all that anger that she had and took it and threw it on my cousin, basically, just because the husband was complimenting her. And my cousin does say that the husband does look like somebody that wants her, but she doesn't entertain him. But this lady, instead of going after her husband, she went after my cousin, and she made my cousin suffer, y'all. So after that, my aunt is like, listen, I'll do everything for you. The doctors, when you go back for an appointment, they are going to tell you good news. Don't remove your womb. This lady doesn't want you to get pregnant. She thinks that if her husband sees that you're fertile, her husband is going to want you and want to give you babies or something. Because witches are insane. People that do witchcraft are insane because that doesn't even make sense. Anyways, fine. My cousin is like, okay, my aunt, my prophet of an aunt does things to her, and then they tie a rope around her stomach, and they're like, she needs to stay with that rope for a week. And she's like, after a week, she started smelling foul, like something dead down there, right? And then after that, she went to the doctor, and the doctor she went for a scan again, and then they saw that, oh, you have a corpse living inside of you, and they removed that corpse surgically. Oh, and another thing, the reason why they were going to remove her womb was because that woman, that neighbor, wanted her womb removed because, again, she thinks maybe her husband will want her or something. Whole time my cousin was in a relationship. Anyways, they removed the corpse from her body. It was decaying also, so they removed it. And my cousin, we had a funeral for the baby. Well, it was sad, and her and the baby daddy made up. The guy apologized, y'all, and I don't know how they fix things, but they fix things eventually. And that lady that stays next door, my cousin's neighbor, she's like, she still tries to talk to her, but she's just not having it. Even when the husband greets her, she just is not having it because you are cheating on your wife, you're making your wife do things, and now she's blaming us, and it's just no. She's like, how the wife is trying so hard to be nice, because you know when you catch people that are doing witchcraft on you, they try so hard to be nice because maybe they think you can't see through them.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.